Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Sub Boo, sub Sky.
Hey. Word, we're live. That's dope.
Nice. We are live. And we're
Oh,
rolling.
snap. Is that on Twitch?
It should be on Twitch and YouTube.
Sweet. I will go over there.
We should send out a
listen to
tweet.
myself talk 10 seconds after I say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. How about we should send out a tweet from the MetaCartel Twitter, and then we should all retweet it, and we have to do the thing where we like strategically look at the number of people in the meeting and then make sure that all of them are retweeted.
There you go.
And then guild kick those who didn't.
Yep. Yes. Oh, I'm not logged into the MetaCartel Twitter. Okay, is anyone who's logged into
I'll tweet it
MetaCartel
out.
Twitter? Oh, nice. Okay. Sup, Liz?
Hey. I'm always like laughing when I see you and Peter. It's like some ungodly hour.
It's always fucked up. 5 a.m.'s not too bad. The 5 a.m. ones, I'm like, it's manageable. It's like the 3, like the 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. That's the real fuckery.
How do you manage that? So you just sleep at a normal time and then you wake up at 2:59 and then you go back to sleep afterward?
Yeah. Or just go to bed like a little bit earlier. So last night I was in bed by
Okay.
like 9 to manage.
Oh, yeah, happy belated, by the way. What did you end up doing?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually did fuck all. I just like, it felt like the most like disappointing. Well, not disappointing. It was fun.
Yeah.
We all went out for dinner, but it was just more just like
It's
every other
low-key.
birthday. Doing overseas, doing some fun shit. I was kind of like, oh.
Yeah,
Sitting
I know.
chilling.
It's like, yeah. Well, I hope that you got Tinder anyhow with like friends and family. Yeah, my
Yeah,
birthday's coming up too, and I'm like, there's like literally nothing that can be done.
Yeah. Just like sit on Zoom and have a fucking Zoom
I
birthday.
know.
Like shit. Nice.
I shared a link to the tweet in the
Nice.
Telegram
nice.
chat. I'll drop it here too. Everyone has to retweet it, otherwise you're booted.
Yeah, all right. So there's how many people we got here? 20 people. We need 20 retweets. We cannot start the meeting.
Your retweet should be your consent to the recording.
I consent to the spicy take.
Ooh, that was good. I refresh and instantly see 7 retweets. That's 9.
9.
All right.
Number go up.
50% have passed the test.
10 tweets.
Retweet machine go brrr.
You have to like it
Oh,
too,
I guess
guys.
Fireflies.
There's less likes and retweets. That's
Oh yeah, you
sus.
gotta like it too. Yeah, don't try it. Yeah, there's fucking some sneaky allocations of retweets.
This
and
is so
likes.
sick. Let's go.
Oh, see Adam with the plays. He got the comment as well. Damn.
Extra points.
I guess
Eat
Fireflies
that algorithm
can't,
as hard as possible.
Yeah, I guess Fireflies can't retweet it, so we'll let that away.
Yo, like,
You
who
retweet-
is Fireflies?
It's just a bot that just records all of our meetings, and none of
Where
us
does
know
it
about.
go?
No, none of us know.
Can we kick them out?
It's Libra. Yeah.
Wait,
Wait, no, we don't know
it
how.
has a name on it now. It's Shreyan. Who's Shreyan?
Yeah, I think we know who it is. I think it's one of the guys from Medic. But yeah, we do not have the.
Can I remove him?
And I said to Peter, I was like, should we try and do something about it? And Peter's like, whatever, who cares? Like, what? Someone's going to be secretly recording our meetings and then use it in fucking 5 years to cancel us? Like, I don't know. Who gives a fuck?
They're booted.
Much
Oh,
easier ways
nice.
to cancel me.
We're recording our own this time.
Yeah, that's true. We don't need Fireflies. We're doing our own.
Yeah.
All right. 15. Man, there's still 5 people that are hearing the voice but are not retweeting. All right? It's a problem. I bet it's that Callum Gladstone guy. Look, he's got his video off. He's probably
Yeah, I'll
sitting
have you
there.
know that I actually retweeted it like second I was high on the list. I'm a cool guy.
Because you didn't comment and say first.
Yeah, that's true. Deacon and James Duncan, I know you've just joined, but we actually have a challenge this morning, which is please go ahead and retweet and like the thing posted in the DAO chat.
What do I get for the challenge?
No. 0 rewards.
You get to
This
stay.
Yeah. In MetaCartel,
You
we
You also
stay.
get to not be kicked.
yeah, not be guild kicked.
Not be guild kicked.
We've got a big 2
Amazing.
down now. All right, we can threaten anyone with being kicked.
Mhm.
All right. That's probably
Should
pretty
we
good.
actually test the guild kick function? Because I don't know if it's been well tested, right? Like I haven't seen it in action, right? I guess it's
That's
the mystery to
Peter
me,
really wants to
right?
be guild kicked. Peter really wants to be the first one.
yeah.
He wants to
He
be
just
guild
like
kicked.
trying so hard to be guild kicked from MetaCartel Ventures. He's like, and Victor's comment, being like, how much of this is actually the reason? Like, is it actually just 100% the reason in this conversation? Super funny. All right. Well,
We win?
I think we won. We got pretty close. Patrick and Cooper, you got to retweet the thing in the DAO members chat. But other than that, I guess we'll kick things off. So everyone, if you don't realize, you're currently being live streamed. So if you're scared of being on the internet, please run and hide. The strategy is we're thinking we'll do 1 week of live stream and then the next week of non-live stream. So if we have any like super important agenda items, we'll do them every second week. And then every other second week, we'll just have some live streaming so the rest of the world can see what we're talking about and the cool stuff that we're jamming on.
Is
So,
there
yeah.
anything too spicy for the spicy take?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I kind of copied over most of the agenda from last week and just changed some of the titles. And I don't think anyone else added anything, but obviously, speak out, say whatever. So yeah, the first thing is like media, so that we're live streaming it. I don't know. Do you guys want to like give a quick? I mean, I maybe there's nothing to say, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. So last week we had the Kerp come on and really enjoyed his unique perspective on things, particularly since he is a lawyer. And in this space, I think that there is a dearth of like regulatory and legal understanding. So I found it super helpful. We're gonna have him. So we're gonna have 3 co-hosts going forward. So me, Hamad, and Kerp. So super excited about that. So right now we're trying to figure out, like a good sort of like frequency in terms of having a constant deluge of content, propaganda machine and all. So what we're planning on doing is we're going to like film the spicy take, but we're not going to like upload the entire recording so people are motivated to join, but we'll have the recording for ourselves. We want to like cut up the pieces and like retweet it. So ideally we would have like, at least like fresh content on our Twitter or YouTube or Twitch, like among all of the platforms. We would love to have something every day. But yeah, that's something that we are working toward. In terms of, so actually, I'm going to send around a poll in the chat right here. We did hear feedback from our last town hall that the spicy take time might not work for everyone. So I've proposed like 2 new times as well in this doodle link that I've sent in the chat. So if you could just like indicate which ones out of the 3 times work for you, you can select multiple times, that would be great. And in this way we can find out like democratically what time works best for everyone. And remember, after you click the times, to press send, or else, it won't go through. Right, so I think it's great that we're starting to stream the MetaCartel Townhall as well. I really, I'm like a relative newcomer, I suppose, to MetaCartel, but I found everyone so incredibly welcoming. Everyone has been really nice. And it's just like a true differentiator, in my opinion, between the Ethereum community and other communities, namely Bitcoin. So everyone has been just super, super awesome. And I do feel like if people could just get like a flavor of what's happening during the meetings, like more people would be motivated to join. And if you guys are up for it, if there are like things that we could like splice out and like redistribute on like YouTube or Twitter, I would be super open to that if they're like funny moments or whatever. What else? I had a really exciting so that's it for like the live stream. So the other component of MetaMedia is the weekly newsletter. So I'm going to send one out today just about like Ethereum 2.0. It's like super exciting. But I also did an interview for a future Meta Brief newsletter with Simona Pop, who started the Bounties network, and the Bounties protocol is like the protocol that Gitcoin is built upon. And I'm really excited to do more of that kind of stuff. I think with these newsletters, just like highlighting members of the community, like the awesome stuff they've done, like how they feel about the space. Because there's just like so much cool stuff, like with Meta Factory, with like Raid Guild, with like Venture DAO. I think we just need more like megaphones amplifying everything that's happening. And then the last part around the MetaMedia is around Meta Review, which is our quarterly publication. So Niran, if you're on the call, I can let you speak to that because I know you have you've created like a form for people to fill out.
Yeah, so the MetaMedia Review, the whole point of it, as with the rest of MetaMedia, is to give people a perspective on the people that are actually making this whole Ethereum thing happen and why they're here in the first place. So for this first issue of the MetaMedia Review, we want to hear from people about their stories. How did you get here? How did you get involved? And why are you here? Like, what does this kind of work mean to you? And what should newcomers to the space understand about what the people already here are doing? So if you have a story that you want to tell about your journey in the Ethereum ecosystem, that's what this form is for. If you know of your friends who have stories that they want to tell, share this form with them. We want to collect 5 to 10 of these and publish them as the first issue of the MetaMedia Review and make it a quarterly thing on an ongoing basis. So this first issue will be a collection of these kinds of stories, and future issues might be about different specific topics. In general, we want people to be able to talk about their ideas, debate what we should actually be trying to do in this arena. If you're familiar with political magazines like the National Review for conservative stuff or Jacobin for socialist stuff, kind of like that, except we're not really doing politics here, but it is a sort of movement, and there are ideas behind it, and people should be discussing those ideas. This is the forum for that to happen.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm really excited for like our first issue of the MetaMedia Review. And yeah, there's just like, you know, I think as we've mentioned before, I think good, like having one place for like good content is hard to find, right? It's like you have to like weed through like, oh, this person on Twitter and like this person on Substack, and it's all incredibly fragmented. But the idea is that we can amplify what's going on in Web3 through many different touch points, like a live stream, like a long form, like prestige publication, as well as a weekly newsletter, and definitely open to everyone's input as well. This is all like very freshly baked, so nothing is set in stone. Yaylor, Hamad, Kerp, do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I was gonna say that one of the cool thing we wanted to start doing is like have more noob friendly stuff. We had a conversation the other day about how like unless you're like deeply entrenched in crypto Twitter, half the terminology everyone uses is like really unknown to a lot of people. And even a lot of us, like, you know, there'll be people that like don't know what others are talking about, but are too afraid to even like say it, so they like don't look dumb. So we were thinking of having like segments that are like focused around noobs and helping them like figure out what's going on, and doing like, you know, let's play for dApps. So like getting people to like hop on and start using a dApp that they never used before, and just like live streaming it and seeing what happens, commentating over it and stuff.
I think that one can get pretty spicy if we're willing to pull up trash UX and just call it
really
out.
Cool. I like that.
And yeah, like if anyone here ever wants to like hop on a stream for whatever, like even just to like, you know, chat, do whatever, I think it would be cool just to have like a super casual, like, you know, in general, I just see this as like, you know, documenting like our journey and everything we're doing. So like however we can do that, we're pretty much game for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say just broadly, like what's drawn me into the MetaCartel sort of ecosystem is the community aspect, and the extent to which it's really fascinating to see a community of people that are all working on separate cool things instead of, and as much as they're the people that talk and promote, like everybody has their side thing that they're working on. So you don't end up with that thing where it's just like, well, ask the marketing department. I don't know. And I think that's a really interesting opportunity for a lot of these organic sort of outreach opportunities where we can both, invite people that would be compatible into the community at the same time we're amplifying, like what the community is actually up to. So it's really, the community is both our audience and at the same time our topic, essentially, I think. So really, like what you guys are interested in is really important to us. Like what you want to show up for and talk trash in the chat, whatever, like that's the thing we want to do. At the same time, I think we can do it in a way where people end up watching that, like, we don't even know. And that's great too, because it raises the profile of the whole, the whole project. But yeah, mostly just stoked to be working on it.
What do you guys estimate your weekly number of hours spent just sort of keeping up is, as far as like figuring out what something is, not directly related to any project you're working on, just simply you've seen enough references to something that you figure you need to dive in at least a little bit? Like what is the average weekly, requirement to sort of like be somewhat up to it?
Is that a question for the broader community?
Yeah,
or just mean like,
is that a
what's
meta
important
media
enough
question?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think so. I mean, to the extent that we're trying to translate that for noobs at some level, or maybe even ignoring what's recently happening, but just sort of bring people from 0 miles per hour up to like 25 and explain what a DAO is. That's one project. Or there could be something that's like, how do we distill the last week in the various proliferation of wifeys into English, for people that don't speak crypto. In a short, compressed way. Is that even worthwhile? And just like, how much time does it even take to feel like you can explain that, to your other crypto brethren? I'm just kind of curious, like, what people consider the sort of like weekly load to sort of stay up to date is, as far as hours spent.
Yeah,
I definitely feel like it's like 5 to 10 hours if you want to be like super in the loop with stuff. Like I love like reading. I love like listening to podcasts, and like Kernel has a bunch of like really amazing talks. So would highly recommend that. And just like scouring materials. And there's like so many great DeFi newsletters, but I feel like especially if you have a busy day or whatever, it's like easy to let them accumulate. So I like going through them in one setting. But I definitely think it's a few hours. But the important thing I think is to do something that's like organically fun for you, because at the point where you're trying to keep up because you're like for the sake of keeping up, then it becomes work, and then it becomes like a drag. So I don't know. I wouldn't say I do it like several hours every day, but when like the fancy strikes or whatever, I'll just set aside a bunch of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. There's like that maintenance level, right? Like even once you get some base understanding, you just have to put in like a few hours a week just to like maintain pace with innovation. And you can never I feel like I can never like maintain like total understanding of everything by any means. So like it's totally like pick and choose, which is really nice to have like communities like MetaCartel where people like say a thing like 3 or 4 times and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I should go check that out, instead of like just randomly wandering through the wild by myself, figuring out which podcast to look at and shit.
Yeah, that repetition is really valuable to me. Like it's not so much the first time I hear something, it's usually like the second or third. And using MetaCartel as a filter of somebody else saying it in this community is all of a sudden like, okay, it's time to look. And that's like a huge like value add that I don't think is like explicitly recognized, but just, having a community that just says something that all of a sudden says, maybe this is worth taking a look at.
Yeah.
You might be too late then.
I think the hardest part is honestly maybe it's just me because I'm hyperactive, but like it's stepping back and going, okay, you don't need to know everything that's happening all at it. Like things aren't going to move so fast that if you don't burn a certain amount of time making sure you know what the next hot thing is, that you're going to miss something. Like you can wait for it to bubble through your mental models, whatever they may be, right? And mine are all, at this point in my life, they're based around I want to work with cool people. So I just kind of hang out with the people that I want to build stuff with. And if it ends up being signaled by that group, I mean, it's the same thing that Ben was saying about sort of Raid Guild. Once they've mentioned it enough times, but even within that group, like I keep hearing kernel, but I'm not a dev. So I'm kind of like, okay, there's, that's for sure a thing. And if anyone ever suddenly goes, we need a contract from a lawyer, I'm going to go, okay, this is one to take seriously. But like I haven't burned any time figuring out what's actually going on yet.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly the devs that are chattering about it, right? So that's not really my wheelhouse.
Well, it would be cool, like Liz, if you have like good talks that you recommend people watch, because I know you're not really a dev-minded person either. Like that you think other people would be interested in. Like we could aggregate those for other people to watch, because I'd be down. If you find it interesting, I'll probably find it interesting.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I can make that I can include that as part of the meta brief if people would find that helpful. But I do think that there is a tendency in the space to be like, well, I'm not technical, I'm not like a cryptographer, I'm not a developer, so, that shit is not for me. I mean, one, that's like wrong, because I think if anyone really understands their field, they're able to distill it in layman's terms. And two, like the impact of Web3, although it starts with the code, it really ends with the community. So I think, the ability to understand, hey, what is like the societal impact of this? Like, how does this change our current establishment structure? How does this, like unseat incumbents and so on and so forth? What is like the value of this to me in my everyday life? I think that understanding is far superior than just like technical understanding. Although, of course, that's really important, but it's two halves to a whole, in my view.
Yeah, there's sort of an analogy to something I say in music a lot when I'm defending, people get real tribal about their types of music. I'm into punk, and it's like, there is stuff that I don't understand and I don't like, but if you have 50 million streams, you're onto something I don't get. But it's kind of like, it's sort of that same thing where you don't necessarily need the technical understanding if you can go, well, there's a shitload of people using it, so something's working. Like, you need to try to dissect that piece. At the same time, I like to just hang around. Like, I do this with Lexdow a lot. Like, I attend all of the hacking calls, although I'm not a coder. Just listening to them move the pieces around is helpful for understanding like what's doable, and then ultimately how to explain it to the people that are going to, like, my concern is lawyers coming in, they're just never going to learn to program. Like, they lock down their skill set, they're good, but they're curious. I need to be able to break it down for that subset in a way where, hearing the programmers talk about it does help as well. So, I think the coolest thing with DAO structures is they're all kind of in the same place. Like, every company I've ever worked for, if I was like, hey, can I just hang out for this technical meeting? They kind of would have been like, no, that's not your department. Get out of here. Which is always frustrating to me, because I'm sort of like, well, I just kind of want to sit here and do other work and listen to you like a podcast. It'd be like, they'd take that like it's insulting or something. They're like, no, okay.
What a hilarious model. Like, you want to do extra work and like learn more, and they're like, no, like, you're wasting time.
Wrong tribe, get out.
Yeah.
Like, but that's why it's different over here. So
yeah, it was funny. Like, when I went to DevCon last year, I was like, I went to a lot of talks, and so many of them were like insanely deeply technical. And I'm just like looking around, and I'm like, there's probably like 5% of this room that understands what's actually going on, but everyone's like pretending they understand almost. And it's like, I feel like that's like, even before like getting involved with the space, like I was like, oh, it's not worth it for me to get involved because I don't know Solidity. Even though I was a developer, right? I'm like, oh no, like unless I know Solidity, like I'm going to be useless. So like I feel like there is that sort of perception from like outsiders that like you need to be deeply technical to like be involved. And then even from like insiders, like people who are in the space, like that, I guess, fear of like not knowing what's going on or anything. But, in reality, like, it's like the code is like, it's just code, right? It's just a means to an end. How you use it, what it does, like where you actually like trying to progress towards, that's all like stuff that happens outside of the code per se. So yeah, I think there's tons of room for non-technical people, and in fact the more non-technical people we have, probably the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, like with Yaler starting Noob DAO and stuff, it kind of got me thinking. We were having a conversation about it too. Is like, what is the thing that, like, where do the noobs come from? And even from just the last few people talking, that's different angles, like a curious lawyer or open source dev or someone that's into community. And all these things are like bringing people, like Web3 is bringing all these people together in different ways. But like, what is the thing that actually like clicks with someone? And they're like, okay, I'll actually go figure out how this works and put in the extra time to know what's going on. Or, you know, maybe it's just that they want to get some mad gains in DeFi or something. But what is that thing? And like, how do we approach the guy who bought 1 Bitcoin or bought 1/10 of a Bitcoin on Coinbase? And how do we say, like, look at this whole community. It's amazing. Come dive down the rabbit hole a little more, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to me, it's like there are many paths and many like strings to pull on. So like we as like organizers of Noob DAO just need to figure out like what motivates people, whether it's like, you know, getting sick gains from DeFi or like doing cool artwork with NFTs or just like diving into communities of like other slightly nerdy but like freedom fighting minded people who want to just do cool stuff together and being like, all right, cool, well, there's a place for you and there's like an avenue for you, kind of like how DAO Rush Week is like, there's a DAO for you, right? Like, and if there's not a DAO for you, there's a framework that you can build it yourself and be, you know, bring other people like you into it. So I'm starting at the very base level of it, right? Like a little bit of shared vulnerability, like where have you suffered, right? Or like what thing have you encountered where you're like, oh God, like I made that transaction, I lost like 4 ETH, or, you know, like I lost my wallet. Like, so it's very common, right? And it's cool to see all the people like at different levels and different places in their journey share their experience, because they're like, yeah, we've all screwed up, or we've all thought we knew something and like we really didn't, and there are still things we don't know. So it's like starting from that base level, it's like, yeah, there are all things we don't know, right? Like, but there's things we want to learn as well, and there's also like ways for us to engage other people from that level of like, yeah, I was a noob too, and in some ways I still am a noob, right? So it's like I'll bring myself back down to your level and say like, all right, cool, like we can bring you along in a way that's like where I'm not grandizing my own knowledge or my own like level of understanding in this community. It's a
forever noob.
Working. Yeah, forever noob. It's a state of mind. Noob mind.
I think coming together and like working together on things is definitely one of the largest pieces about, you know, what's happening here too, right? Like, and it goes back to that point about like Hamad's talking about, like, you know, he doesn't know Solidity, so like he's going to be useless or whatever. But like once you get into a community, then like you can just collaborate with other people who have those skill sets, you know, and you can do whatever the hell you want in like whatever.
A well-versed enough community. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, totally. But you can like, yeah, just collaborate with other people who have like various different skill sets, but collectively you can like make whatever happen, you know, basically. So
there are very distinct niches in this space, like the DeFi guys, the NFT like space, and like a lot of that does not commingle at all. And like a lot of them don't even know what the others are doing. And I see DAOs more than any place else being able to bridge those gaps in new and exciting ways. Like in like the DAO space has really been able to pull those niches together and allow for like the cross-pollination of ideas and concepts and personalities and whatnot. And so I definitely think like this is the right path to like explore that type of stuff.
Drew, to your point, so those 3 spaces, like those are my favorite three things in the space, and they're actually all coming together. Like prediction markets use NFTs, so that, and prediction markets are DeFi, and then all the DeFi projects are using DAOs now. And so DAOs are now getting in, like we're starting DAOs to do DeFi and NFTs. So they're actually all coming together. So you're going to have to know all of them, because I think they're going to, 2 years from now, we're not going to distinguish between the 3. I think they're all going to be the same.
The great merge has begun.
Yeah.
What's that? And the coolest project that we'll probably see that puts them all together first is the Avagache. I don't know if you guys have seen that. but
yeah,
it's
that's
like
super cool.
Aave based NFTs. It's gonna be super cool.
It's like fascinating too, because I was just having this conversation in like a VR thing, like presentation, and like the mindset of someone like coming into a game that they were I forget what the game they were talking about, but it was like introducing verifiable ownership to a game, like a traditional game platform, and to users that aren't used to this stuff, don't come from crypto mindset. Actually creating or introducing like the secondary economy stalled the game out, because people were like, that like emotional or psychological distinction, and now I have to like manage like my assets, and I have to like sell things or buy things. Like I just want to play a game, right? So it's just like the speculative piece of the whole conversation, and the DeFi piece, like it's evolving the user type like in a very significant way. And this is something actually with MetaFactory we're like struggling with, like the creators and the artists and the DeFi people who want to invest in something. These are two very distinct mindsets, and like how to create incentive alignment and how to like build these bridges and what, and like DAOs provide this, tokens provide this everything we're experimenting with is like so relevant. Yeah, you're starting to see
to give this group a sense of like the digital art NFT space. There is, and for those that don't follow this, like someone recently bought for like $20,000 a single red pixel,
Jesus Christ,
which is an NFT.
Which red pixel is this? How do I? What's the exact color?
I'll send it to you guys.
This reminds me of when app stores, when the mobile app store was just starting to take off. You know, I remember that. I got the very first Android smartphone. This is when iOS just started launching their app store. And you remember that app? It was called the I Am Rich app, and it was something like $20,000 or something.
Yeah, it was just like a picture of a ruby.
Yeah,
it cost $10,000.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm celebrating. Our first successful app was an app that just flipped a coin for you. We got like 10,000 paid downloads in Germany. It paid for our next year of like whatever. Yeah. I don't know where. I don't know who mentioned it. No way to track it. No idea why it took hold.
It's like,
that was a fun day. Going, whoa, we're at the stupid app we built.
This sort of stuff is sort of like deeply ingrained in like modern culture of like this idea of like, you know, flexing on people with like, you know, before it's like, oh, you need Yeezys, you need Louis Vuitton, but when you can just flex on people digitally, and it's just like so much easier. And like I think there's gonna be this idea of like digital luxury goods is like gonna be huge, I think, because like it's so much more liquid too, right? Like if you buy a Louis bag, your ability to like resell it afterwards is like, it's not that easy, you know, to do that. You probably lose money on it versus, you know, if you drop a crazy amount of money on an NFT, there's a high chance that you'll be able to actually resell it for a pretty decent amount. And, you know, I know like a lot of people, even some of the NFTs I bought just randomly, like, you know, I go back a couple of months later and it's like, oh, damn, I could sell these for like 5 times as much now. So I think that like
not to mention
that liquidity and that ease of like trading and selling makes it essentially like this like global market for like digital luxury goods that you can instantly buy and sell.
And a lot of this stuff is all priced in ETH. So with ETH price doubling, people still think of these things in ETH. So if you bought it 6 months ago for like 2 ETH, now someone's giving you 3 ETH. It's like in dollar terms, it's 5 times as much, you know?
But going back to what Drew was saying a second ago, I mean, there's definitely a distorting effect of this, right? Like, and his example of having a game community essentially be like derailed by speculation and sort of like financialization of it. That's a real downside to this, right? And we're a DAO that came up trying to build all this stuff, and we're trying to find our purpose. But to the extent that kind of the meta goal is to expand, you know, DAOs to existing groups in Web 2 and maybe even offline, to sort of enable them to sort of further their mission, there's a real risk to the way that that's designed, such that it like sucks all the air out of their original purpose, and it becomes kind of this like elephant in the room. Like to me, I would say like Wifey was like that. It all of a sudden was like, this mental virus that you had to pay attention to, and everybody was talking about, and it was hard to grok at first and to understand, and then all the variants on it, and it just sucks up all this energy, and it shapes people's mental models, and it makes other potential investments less appealing. And to the extent you were working on something non-financial, and all of a sudden, wifey's in your head now, that's a huge detriment. And so I think that there's really kind of like a downside to the kind of like addition of financial incentives and putting, internet of value, sort of without really thinking about the way that it's going to change the way the community relates to their original mission. Anyway, that's just my thought.
I almost see it like a force of nature. Like you can't stop it, you can't control it. When a new platform takes off, you're bound to have scammers and shit apps take the spotlight. But over time, the maturity starts happening, and that naturally shakes itself out. But yeah, there will be some of that kind of shake up. There'll be a bunch of negative news about like DAOs that are scamming people and pyramid schemes, and like all that is going to come out into the light. I think it's
that's
just
what humans do. It's always happened.
But I'm not concerned about
been handled by the law.
Part of it. I mean, I know that's going to happen. That's certainly bad. But I'm talking about as they're functioning correctly, and they're not scams, and they're not bad faith, and they're really designed for good reasons. The effect they have on the way people relate to each other and what they're doing, and then all of a sudden just checking prices all the time on this community coin or whatever it is, like that's a real transformation, and it has a serious sort of social impact. Maybe there's a net positive case there, but I think it's like, I'm not so much worried about the scams and the bad cases. I'm talking about it working successfully.
People I realized this in a product context pretty recently, but like I'll explain that in a second. People don't I almost want to do a show of hands of who knows how to balance their checkbook. People don't understand finances with the money that exists already. And we're like, hey, there's this thing over here. If they rolled out money I really had to worry about in World of Warcraft, I would not come back probably. They're like, oh no, I'm going to go in World of Warcraft and balance my checkbook? Like what
if number go up though? But what if number go up in World of Warcraft on your
right. Well, so then you're immediately going to have the people that are fed by that incentive mechanism, and then you end up with World of Warcraft bros.
Or even worse, you're like paralyzed to play the game because you're now like, holy shit, I own like $5,000 worth of stuff in this game. Like, I'm not playing for fun anymore. I'm playing for games. Like my my psychological shift there is significant. And like from a product perspective, I think what people will have to do, especially on like a gaming standpoint, they'll have to account for each of these different user types and provide a way for people to speculate that doesn't actually affect the game or create pay to play mechanics such that it's nerfing and completely wrecking like noobs from coming in. It's really challenging.
I think this is why the meta narrative of MetaCartel, metagame, and noob DAO are so important, because it is through that spirit of like taking ourselves not seriously that makes us important, right? Like we're not here just to try to turn coins into profit for the sake of. It's something more than that. And we represent that something more through the fact that we don't take it and we don't take ourselves overly serious. And I think it's through that kind of narrative that allows other people to better engage, is more approachable to engage us in that way. And it allows us to foster the spirit of the community above the financialization side of things. Otherwise, you're right. We can be swallowed up by the DeFi side of the dynamic of the tokens.
I think that's a really, really good point about making sure we like don't get like, when you introduce these financial incentives, do you distract communities from their main purpose? I know something that I've spoken about. I know Bill is something that we've spoken about as well, in terms of like when I would go and approach like grassroots organizers who are working on like how to increase voter engagement, or like how to get like, in some kind of grassroots organizations. And I'd be like, oh, well, what if you found a way to pay your members or pay the people that are like actively contributing most, right? And they're like, no, we don't want to do that. I'd be like, why not, right? Like, wouldn't that get better engagement? And they're like, people do this because they want to be doing this. Like, we don't want to introduce financial incentives because like, we don't know what's going to happen afterwards. And like, to me, it's like, they would just do more of what they want to do, right? They're already doing this work. Shouldn't they be paid for the work? But to them, it was a lot more like, no, we just want people to contribute in whichever way they can.
Right, because
it goes back to that old adage, "More money, more problems." Like that's
more money, more problems.
How it works at the end of the day.
Yeah. I will be honest. Yeah. This is one of my great reservations about or concern about the idea of source credit in general. That when you bake in an algorithm that rewards people based off of general algorithms, again, just I don't know what the end game is. I've thought a lot about it, and I get migraines when I do. But I worry about the element of the community turning itself into a sort of like DeFi machine to optimize against value generation instead of being about the community, just being engaged in the community. But there's also that reverse narrative, like the glass half full side of source credit, like, well, if it's all automatic, then people won't think about it and will just engage as their normal selves within the community. But there's that dichotomy between the two is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, it was cool seeing, like, recently MakerDAO like turned on source cred for their forums, and they pay out people who engage in discussion on their forums with DAI. And it was like sort of a really interesting way to see, what will happen, what changes will happen in the community once these financial incentives are there. And interestingly enough, there was like pretty much zero change. The same people were contributing in pretty much the same capacities. And there wasn't really like that much difference between what people were like doing or talking about or saying. It's just that, now every 2 weeks they like got a payout based on like how impactful the conversation was. And I think it really just comes down to
that's actually
comes down to
how recent.
Sorry, what?
How recent was that?
That was just this last month or so.
Yeah, they turned it on like a month and a half ago, and it's been running since. And they started with like.
Funny enough,
do you know how much the payout
I've been. So, or just to add to that. Oh, sorry. There's this background noise. But to add to that, there's we're integrating like Collabland with like some communities with like Spencer Noon, for instance. And it's really simple. They're just getting points on the number of comments essentially they're making in some way. So there's an algorithm behind that, but kind of making it nebulous so that it's less gameable. But is an increase in uptick in engagement just based on like comments and just based on like some nefarious or unknown like token type. This has no financial value associated with it. So we actually are seeing an uptick in those communities for a very simple reward system for participation. So it's interesting that source cred we haven't seen that in the MakerDAO community, for instance.
Yeah, I think like a big part of it is that like, the big question is, are the incentives you're introducing, like, do they go hand in hand with like the goals of the community, or are they sort of like tangential to it? And like the way source cred works is like you can configure it to reward like whatever kind of behavior you want. It's up to you to define what behavior is good for your community, right? So in the case of like MakerDAO, if you're just spamming a bunch of like low quality posts, you're not going to actually get anything. You get stuff based on things that have like high engagement, a high amount of likes, that bring a lot of value. Other people talk about your stuff. So, it's not necessarily like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go farm DAI on the Maker forums by just posting random shit for the sake of like farming DAI. That it doesn't actually like get you far. Whereas like the best way to actually win or like farm the most money is to like genuinely make good posts that people are genuinely interested in. And then if you do that, then, your points go up. And I think like in terms of like how much they were paying out, they started paying out, I think like with 3,000 DAI the first month, but then they're upping it to 10,000 DAI. So yeah, they kind of wanted to like start off slower, but ramp it up as they sort of tune things.
It is interesting though that like as that number gets higher, the amount of work that goes, like, 10 grand, okay, maybe split amongst 100 people that are participating. But if it was like 100 grand, right, and now you have like people playing 3D chess with bots to talk to themselves, to look like engagement, and have the bots on 60 different VPNs. Like, I think like, and I think like the source code, I remember, dude, in Denver, Hamid, and me and you just like talking about source code for like hours and hours on end. And I think like, it is interesting, and I think like that rewarding of communities is like super useful through source code, but it does also. I agree, Jonathan. It scares me. The in-game scares me.
About the bot stuff, we recently added a feature that essentially like you don't get any points until you like get assigned like a trust level. So you basically like another human sort of has to like acknowledge that you're real, and if you're just like talking amongst like other fake bots, and like it basically is just like it doesn't actually like get you anywhere. So until you have a link to like real humans, then it doesn't
just need a good bot. Just need a good bot.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
I mean, if you guys,
let's go build better bots.
If anyone wants to game it, like the best place to try to game it is Source Credit itself. There's like 20K a week being distributed on Source Credit itself. So
we just cracked how this contributes to the robot apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's just going to incentivize better bots.
Yeah, it
is interesting. Like
that's
source code should actually
meta structure that we're talking about here is, regardless of how regardless if we're using source cred or whatever mechanism, it doesn't matter the specific mechanism. The question always comes down to, at the core of what we're talking about is community empowerment, making the community stronger, more vibrant, more healthy, and sustainable. Ultimately, that's like their end goal. That's what we always be focused on: is why are we all here? Why are we all doing this? And it's to empower communities, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's always our guiding light. We can keep Pandora in the box, regardless of what solution we can go with.
Yeah, I think with MetaCartel, like, we really flourished during the bear market, and I really don't know if we would have flourished as much in a bull market, because most of us have probably been distracted with gains and like this token number go up, and like
super interesting.
Yeah.
And that's like, and Peter was talking about that last week, and Peter's not even here, right? So maybe he's like looking at his gains. He's like, oh fuck. I'm probably not. But I think like that is really interesting, because and a bunch of the MetaCartel people have never really been through a bull market, right? Or maybe just caught the tail end of it, and that was sort of their intro. And I think like we have like a responsibility as like a community to make sure that like, I mean, obviously, we can't like police people like watching, the number go up all day, but, like to sort of like spur interesting discussion and like make cool things happen so that people can focus on like, not the number go up. The number will go up forever. I promise. For the next 10 years, the number will keep going up, and it's like actually, trying to put that to back of mind and, making your positions, then, spray and walk away and then focus on different, whatever communities and outcomes that you can sort of.
And like,
if we are the game, it's the exact same thing, right? Our goal of empowering communities, bringing people together, all these things. Now it starts to be, wait, I need to manage my number go up. My priority completely shifts back to the financial focus. It's like this is the exact same problem this game platform had when they tried to introduce like this economy into it.
Yeah. And
I
think like it's going to be really important for us to figure out like where MetaCartel stands like in this like next bull market. I feel like this is like a really like critical time for MetaCartel, where we can this is either the point where we'll fizzle out, or we can really like get a stronghold in the community and push things forward in a really good way. Because we've learned a lot of lessons from back in 2017. And like you start to see glimpses of like, repeat things happening now. But, I just want to really figure out how we can get ahead of that, and how we can sort of use a lot of the things that are happening to our advantage to like drive positive change. And, I want it so that like the distraction is MetaCartel, people focus more attention on MetaCartel, and we're able to like, have bigger impact because of whatever we're doing, rather than like other things taking attention away from us. Because yeah, like in today's thing, like the most valuable like attention is gold, essentially, right? In today's like social media, like oversaturation of content world, if you can hold people's attention, then you kind of hold all the power.
Well, to piggyback on what you're saying, I think that it's important to make sure like that cartel members and people in this circle are like taken care of, like what they have and they need, whether it's like having a job or having like, you know, number go up stuff, like that's something else. But I think it's like basic, you know, things are covered. And like if we're sourcing roles and positions from people within the community, and that there's like, you know, easy inroads for people to keep working on this stuff. Because I have people coming to me all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go work for Uber. I'm like, why? Like, well, fuck, like, how do you make any money around here? I'm like,
don't worry, Yaler. We'll take care of you.
I'm fine. My number go up, dog. Okay. But for everyone, right? Like, and I see that at Raid Guild as well, like making sure that there's opportunities for people flowing and coming through. You know, I think we're getting to a good tipping point where there's lots of opportunities coming in. Now it's a member of like activating, or a matter of activating people and being like, all right, like, here's your opportunity, like go on, get it. But then from that, when like basic essentials are covered, you know, like we're like, hey, being a part of this community is like bringing me opportunity, bringing me value, bringing me community. We can really focus on that community stuff. And like, we can be like, yeah, we're taken care of, right? Like, yeah, the world's fucking taking a shit, but, oh, sorry, are we twitching now? I don't know. Like, I shouldn't say that, but the world's like collapsing, but like, we're all good, right? Like we're taken care of, and we're also welcoming new people in to join and like find a safety net here in this new space, this new community that we're creating.
It's all right. Our stream is rated R anyways, so it's fine.
Yeah, good.
At the same time, we kind of have like a response. I feel like we have a responsibility to also like use our voice to show people that this like what's happening in like their traditional legacy finance world is like, it's showing cracks. It's breaking. Like, we have almost like a responsibility to show that this is a valuable place from an investment and a standpoint, and like a value. Like, I mean, I'm all for like building the community side of it all, but like, we might be on the verge of some real like life-changing, world-shifting shit. And the value of just number go up, because we're measuring everything in a failing currency. It's not number go up, it's dollar go down. You know what I mean? So the mindset is totally off. Like, people are like, gold's at an all-time high. I'm like, no, the dollar value is tanking. That's like so it's like the financial education piece is actually as relevant, if not more so, and increasingly important.
I think
both. I mean, I agree. I think both, right?
Yeah.
Like,
back to what Adam was saying about like, you know, knowing how to balance a checkbook. I think like the really interesting part of this is like, yeah, I don't know how to balance a checkbook, but I can tell you how to make hella money on Grand Exchange and RuneScape, right? And that's like, I feel like that's sort of the situation with a lot of like the younger generation, is that they haven't had that much exposure to the existing financial system. So, but they do have like exposure to like, you know, economies in like video games, or, you know, in sort of other forms. And I think, you know, with everything we're building in Web3, we can sort of replicate that, but for the real world. And it might be that like one thing that can act as like financial education, right? Like, we don't even need to teach them everything about how the old financial system works. If like, not saying that we don't need any of that, but like, you know, those younger people are way more like, they'll be able to pick up on this stuff way faster than someone who already like has a certain mindset for how the financial system is supposed to work. That's like very different from how things work in Web3.
I think there was a gap. There was like a certain generation that all knew how to balance their checkbook, and then everything was abstracted away in that sense, where so everyone was just using their phone to do things. And now it's like, wait, there should be some like financial education here again. Like, you should know how to handle your private keys or something, you know.
The new type of,
not hard. They're all easy things. It should just be normal, like the newer generation.
And if you think about it, like,
I literally learned all of that stuff in a like a Rocks for Jocks class. It was like personal development for athletes.
Oh,
It's like
God.
balance your checkbook, do your laundry, like basic life things.
Yeah.
Uh,
And if you think about it, like
That was a fun 2 credits.
finance should really be like a core subject that you learn in like high school, right? But like if it was the case, then like, you know, people would be a lot smarter with money, which is not good for like corporations and like the system essentially, right? If people are like, oh, maybe I shouldn't buy that new car that I totally can afford off my minimum wage job, you know?
It's like, yeah, it's like in school, it's like, why did I learn square dancing and not how to do my taxes? Like, that's utter bullshit.
Statistics. Everyone should take
literally
statistics.
Makes no sense. But on the financial literacy front, I mean, it's no wonder that our financial system is crumbling beneath us, right? There is like an absolute dearth of financial literacy. There's a stat that I saw that in the United States, like almost 50% of Americans could not afford an emergency of $400. I mean, $400. They don't have that liquid. So, you know, I think there's a tendency in tech when there's new technological paradigms that come along that you try to envision how they should be used based on what you already use now. So in other words, I feel like the limits or potential of new technology is oftentimes in its early days bounded by the human imagination. So for example, you know, when the technology came out for, you know, people to be able to film things, I talked about this in the live stream, to film things that were longer than a few minutes, they were like, oh, we should film plays, obviously, you know, and we're democratizing theater, obviously, and that doesn't take into account the full potential of creating an entirely new medium. And similarly with radio, when that technology was starting to become more mainstream, people were like, oh, this is like a disembodied newspaper. And, you know, it's very helpful to understand new tech by drawing parallels to old tech, but it also does it a disservice, right? Because radio just come in a way that was like beyond newspapers, that helped disseminate information. It helped like entire nations come together and experience the same moments with the same emotional tenor at the same time, and also helped bring about like different genres of popular music. But could be because before it's like, oh, you'd have to attend a show live. And now it's like, oh, we have this collective identity around like rock and roll and jazz and so on and so forth. But I think about that a lot when it comes to DeFi, right? Like when people talk about financial applications that are built on Ethereum or other decentralized platforms, they're like, well, in the real world, there's robo-advisors, so let's have a robo-advisor. In the real world, there's like money markets, so let's bring money markets. In the real world, there's such and so on and so forth. And what I'm really looking forward to personally in the DeFi space is like, when are we gonna like carve out our own thing that's not like a digital version of something that already, or a decentralized version of something that already exists?
Yeah.
And just conscious of everyone's time, going back to your first point, Liz, around, you know, MetaCartel being this like cool collective, and, you know, we'll have great ideas, and actually MetaMedia being like the past hour, right, have just been like a series of like super interesting conversations. And like I think like the initiative of MetaMedia, that what you guys have been doing, whether it's clipping it or, you know, live streaming this, like I think it's fantastic to be able to sort of like give this exposure, because this has just been like, you know, and all of the insight that's in this call added together, you know, times by 28 or whatever it is, you know, and cut into different pieces. I think it's super fantastic to be able to do this.
These are the
job,
post-its
everyone.
for all the topics I didn't veer off into rabbit holes regarding.
So we all just have like walls covered and post-it notes.
Strange.
Like,
It
the only
wouldn't
two
be a
things.
MetaCartel meeting without going into rabbit holes.
Exactly. The only two things that I did want to talk through, the one of them was the MetaCartel grantee merger and acquisition post. I know, Pete, you said maybe you would have a go at writing it. I don't know if that has occurred.
Yeah, talking to Cooper, started writing it, but we're making it broader about other successful grants that MetaCartel had. So it's like MetaCartel, a year of separating wet from the chaff.
Nice. Excellent. And then there's also the Fork the World hackathon, which ends tomorrow, the next day.
No, we extended it.
No, submissions Saturday. Yeah, can we get some retweets on this shit?
That'd be great.
Yes, give us a link. Give us a link, and we have to force retweet it as well. Sick. Nice. And then so the XDAI DAO, well, we could skip that. Oh, DAO House. So congratulations to DAO House team. Woohoo! The fundraising insta closed. We're now sort of, and interestingly, actually, we have a call later on today, but we had the first call yesterday, and I found it like super interesting of this like future of work thing. We sort of make a thing and then give out shares based on making a thing and then raise money, right? And then you have sort of some correlation there, maybe not. But then you sort of form these work teams around the fundraising that the DAO has received. And that's like super future of work. It also is going to create like really interesting like paradigms where like, usually you have like an HR manager and a boss, right? And they're the ones who are saying, yeah, you're not quite working hard enough. And like the transparent communication within the DAO is going to be like very interesting. I don't know, Ben, Deacon, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to get weird real fast. Yeah, totally. But it'll be a super interesting game theory, right? Like we're locked into the game theory now, like the loot and the shares, and everybody has like some level of accountability and direct power and voice. So, but yeah, it totally will be like crazy future work shit because in to Yayler's point, like figuring out how people lowering the coordination cost of people to like be able to like contribute to various different DAO projects, basically, right? Like, like I don't think DAO House contributors will be like 100% 40 hours a week or whatever, like in the old world. It'll be like, 10, 15 hours here, and then you're doing another thing for like MetaFactory or SourceCred or Raid Guild or whatever, right? So like figuring out how that kind of works, so like to where people can like come in and like contribute to these various different DAO projects and make a living and pay their bills and shit and continue building.
Yeah, there's a
John. Was that?
I think there's gonna be a lot of correlations to open source development and open source communities, and there already is in the DAO. And so, yeah, DAO House is now a DAO itself. So it'll be interesting how that goes.
DAO House, House of DAOs.
Yeah, the House DAO.
House DAO.
All right, I want to do something really quick. If no one has anything else important, I want to do a noob moment. I want to open the floor up to anyone who wants to share their like most interesting or like vulnerable noob moment of lately or of your experience.
Alex Nesmith shared.
He shared on Twitter for sure. He shared on Twitter. I've heard that story.
I got one, but it's not crypto. I ran my first startup for 4 years straight without paying any taxes. I don't know. I thought like, you can get away with this for a while. And it did. I had to pay a bunch of fines to clean up the mess, but did you make money though?
Crypto that haven't paid our crypto taxes.
I was just going to say, I still haven't paid crypto taxes.
Crypto taxes are made up. The idea that you have to, like when the coin goes up and then you trade to another coin and then you trade to another coin and you're only holding in crypto and then you have to cash out to pay tax on that. That's a made up idea. I challenge anyone to take that to the high court and actually make a stance on that. Fuck the concept.
I just don't know how they're even going to run that investigation if they want to.
Oh, and this is being live streamed too, so now you have that recorded forever. Yeah.
By the way, my day job is actually working for the IRS, so I got a bunch of material.
You've got a mole, fella.
Go back to my bosses with.
Yeah, I just want to say for the IRS listening, I paid my taxes. They were done correctly.
Yes, same.
I paid my taxes.
Damn it.
This is all a joke.
Taxes, yeah.
I withdraw my previous statement.
Any other good noob moments? Anyone have?
Any other good noob moments? Come on.
It's not really a new moment, but I also have a pillow around here that I paid 200 Bitcoin for. That haunts me.
That's amazing.
It wasn't really a noob problem. It was a believer in the promise of digital money problem.
There was a good one recently from the Meta Gamma Delta people, but one of the members had pushed their private key or their seed phrase or something up into a GitHub repo, and so there's bots that are like this for any kinds of keys, and basically within a few minutes it had drained her wallet, and anytime she tried to put any ETH in to make any transactions, it would drain it immediately. So I mean, these are things that I've done in the past too, and everyone does something accidentally like that eventually.
Yeah, the worst is when that happens and you're like, I just got to put more funds in there. Like something's wrong. Just keep sending money to it. I really don't know what's happening. they've got to be somewhere, right? Like,
she was trying to rage quit out of a DAO, but she needed the funds to do that. But the bot wasn't smart enough to know that she was also a member of a DAO. It could have done it for her and got her funds there, but anytime funds in, it just
because she needed the funds to process the transaction to rage quit the funds in the DAO.
I'm embarrassed to say I've been hit by the same attack vector. I accidentally committed one of my keys. I revoked it within seconds. And I thought, no one knows this repo. It was only out there for like not even 10 seconds. Totally cool. I reverted that shit, rebased it, rewrote the Git history, pushed it. Good, all good. Nope, bot drained my ETH just like that.
Pete,
and
are you pissing right now?
But
what? This is the noob moment of the week. Is Pete is currently pissing on the live
He's taking a
stream.
pee during the MetaCartel.
His name is
Townhall.
His name is Pete.
There's your new moment.
Keith the Peer.
There's your new
All right,
moment.
that's going on.
There's your new.
Okay.
I'm so glad we're live streaming this.
That's the highlight. I can't believe no one's done that yet. This is my live viewing experience.
Couldn't have ended it any better way.
I did it
Thanks,
once,
guys.
and it has caused me to be very careful. I literally went and bought a headset. I can look at that and go, okay, it's red. I can pee now.
Well, on that, that's probably a pretty excellent note to end the town hall on. I think that's a very perfect fail. Yeah, so awesome fucking live stream. I think it's this is like super great content. Hopefully we can slice it up and create some awesome. I know that will be a good clip. It's at least going to be a couple of amazing clips. And then yeah, next week we'll do the same thing and chuck in the gender items up.
Yeah, we should post this video on the website. This should be like the showcase of MetaCartel. Actually,
Yeah, it's just like a pop-up. Whenever you open the MetaCartel website, this pops up. It's a 1 hour story.
Stop whatever you're doing.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everyone.